This is required watching, where we watch the essential films from lists of cinematic influencers and look at them through the lens of learning about filmmaking and how to move forward. I'm your host, Trey Epps, and this film is the sequel to Black Panther. It stars Letitia Wright. Uh, Listen, you know who it stars, right? You know who wrote it. You know who directed it.
We were excited, but felt it felt a little different from the first time because people knew what to expect a little bit, and expectations were a little higher. Whereas when we released the first one, people didn't really have expectations at all, you know. But with Chadwick's tragic passing, things got different. It was I was in a unique space. I had written a full script before he passed away that was starring him and was very much about his character.
Right.
And I had never been in that position to write a script and not be able to go make it, you know. And so I was grieving him as a friend, grieving my lead actor and creative partner. But also grieving all of these ideas that we had poured ourselves into.
And then you're in Los Angeles. The premiere was fantastic. Just watching the red carpet and the actors' reactions. And Angela said, you know, our hearts did right by Chadwick. What was it like for you at that premiere without him?
That's a great question, Gail. The premiere was more emotional than I expected it to be.
Really? How so?
Well, we had been kind of, in a way, we had been keeping him alive by working on the film, and when the film was ours, you know, it was our special thing,
Anyways, I wanted to stay away from this film because this film is Black Panther 2. I don't typically record every film that I watch, and this is one that I thought I would stay away from, but I felt it important to talk about. If you want to hear something more insightful, if you want to hear something more analytical, there are other critics talking about it. Ryan Coogler's talking about it on a podcast and has done many interviews, so go there. But I felt it was important to amplify these voices and the tragedy. Yeah, these voices, specifically filmmakers of color. But the tragedy of losing Chadwick Boseman is at the heart of the story, and the characters have a lot to deal with in terms of the loss of T'Challa. But what I found more interesting is a continued exploration of antagonists and protagonists in the Black Panther series. It continues to shine a light on the complexities of the human condition. First, with Killmonger and T'Challa represented by two sides of the same coin of blackness. I'm not sure if I heard this before, if I made it up, but the MLK, the Martin Luther King, you know, and the Martin Luther King and Malcolm X narrative, I've heard, it really shows the angle of how we must fight for what we have, what we deserve, and what we think is right, while also trying to please the world and our families and preserve our own resources from those who want to take advantage of it. I won't get into exactly how that translates into the real world. I think you understand, but with the introduction of Namor, this is further explored. I think Namor and his people are in this gray area despite being the antagonists of the film, which is probably where my only criticism. Let's go back. I'll get back to that, but Namor and his people are looking to protect themselves from the world who would plunder their resources and discard of them. And sadly, we as a people go to war with others because they have a different agenda. And I think that's what he does with the people of Wakanda. I love Black Panther because it makes me look elsewhere to have fun with the film. I look at myself, the world, and the music, and it really helps enhance the story that's being told. If you think Marvel movies are all fluff, you haven't seen this film and you haven't seen the original Black Panther. Or just, maybe you just don't understand it. Shuri's arc in the second film is interesting. She's a princess who is being forced to take the mantle as Black Panther as well as Queen, ? I don't really understand how royalty works, but she's princess, her mom died, she's queen, right? I imagine, as well as dealing with the additions of her family, with young Toussaint and those she has to rely on. She's forced to play a part. She's forced to play a part that we all know well. I think I think that is what makes it clear that we need to push our protagonists further into these bad moments. And I wasn't sure how it was, as I was watching the film, I wasn't sure how we're going to get Shuri into these bad moments. We start with a tragedy that we had to, and being T'Challa's death, but that, like, if we know anything about story structure, it wasn't going to be the only bad thing. So pushing Queen Ramonda, pushing her death is incredible. It's an incredible thing to do, because this movie is filled with death, and it was meant to be filled with grief, as per the original kind of story that Ryan Coogler had laid out. But what I really think it is that I love about this film is the exploration of cultures, from, again, blackness of the original Black Panther to really diving into blackness and being African and being Mayan and having these Latin American roots is fucking incredible. The soundtrack is great. Yes, we got Rihanna out of retirement. Yes, I know, Queen Riri. But the soundtrack, the rest of the soundtrack is still fantastic. It's so good to have all reaches of these two cultures being collided on this soundtrack that have a really interesting story about how they're being recorded. Watch that interview with Ludwig. But yeah, I'll stop. I'm getting a bit somber about this whole thing. Feels a bit somber when really it's a celebration. It's a celebration that we're able to get this movie out. Yes, it's a product by Disney. Yes, it's a product of companies. Yes, it's all corporate. But I'm sure after Chadwick's death, Ryan Coogler and anyone on the team could have given up on this film, or at least pushed it, or at least not agreed to do it in this way. I'm sure they had some sort of agency and power to make this film not happen, and they did. They pushed through it. I hope they are seeking therapy, because I can't imagine that loss, but they were able to use this film as a certain bit of therapy to get to the end and really continue to explore the world that they shared with Chadwick. And I think that's incredible, and I think it's honorable, and I think I don't take it for granted. So thank you for everyone who worked on that film. Is this film required watching? Yeah, I do think it's required watching. Sorry, Scorsese. Sorry, anyone who thinks Marvel films are not real films or what have you. I think this film is an exception to that. I think there are other exceptions within the Marvel Universe, but I refuse to let anyone think that Black Panther or this Black Panther series as it stands right now is anything other than masterful filmmaking. So yeah, that's it. Again, we're talking about films that are in the conversation for the Oscars, in Oscar contenders. So if you agree or disagree, I would love to hear it. I won't argue with you, but I'd love to hear your voice. Also, let me know what you think we should cover next, whether that's a part of this conversation on Oscars or some really, really good films. I'd love to hear you and love having a conversation, because Required Watching is a film club, guys. It's a film club. So get your comments going. Send me a message. Tweet at me. Do the damn thing. Until next time, guys. Peace out.